Cool. Let's do a quick review of what we were doing last week. Paul, don't know what to tell you. I think everyone else can hear me. Can everyone else hear me? Is anyone else having audio issues? Okay. Cool. Maybe restart it, Paul. But we are recording, so if you miss anything in this beginning, it's review right now. And it'll set us up for talking about some stuff. Cool. Let's build just couple of little components. Div. We'll just call it home or container. All right. So in our container, we are going to have we'll just do an H1, and we'll just call it digital agency. And then we'll do a quick P, paragraph tag. We do digital stuff. Cool. All right. So we're going to talk about specificity for the most part right now. Let's come down into here and what the container? Yeah, let's do a container, and we'll say container. We'll have the old everything's normal. Going over last week, let's do a width of 100%, and let's do a max width of 700 pixels. Okay, let's go border 1px solid red. All right, there's our container. I'm going to throw our reset on just to get that going. All right. We're going to go height. No, we won't need a height. Let's go padding. Padding of 15 pixels. There we go. So if we wanted to select our H1 within our container, we'd go container H1, right? Pretty simple. And we know that this is super specific, right? This is going to be more specific than just saying H1, even if this H1 was below it, right? This is more specific, so these rules are going to take specificity. These rules are the ones that are going to be applied. If we're trying to override any of these rules in here, it's not going to work, right? Because this is more specific. So make sure everyone understands that part right now. And let's go font size. Let's do this. Let's add a couple of things to us. We're going to go box sizing, border box. And what are we going to do for our font size if we want to use rem? %. This isn't like I want to say that this 62.5%. This is a cool trick. This isn't like I don't want to say it's not very widely used because it is. But a lot of people don't know about this, and a lot of people get really hung up with using rem and m and different font sizes and units and stuff. So I want you to know that that's like a really cool trick that you know. To use that 62.5%. So now this gives us the ability to 1 rem equals 10 pixels, right? So this is going to allow us to go through our code, and we know that 1 rem equals 10 pixels. And this is 10 pixels at a standard size, at the medium size. No, Jorge, just set it to 62.5. I'm just giving you a comment right now of what it does. Cool. You're answering Paul's question. All right. So now we can use rems wherever we want. So if I wanted to make this 18 pixel font size, what would I write here for font size? 1.8, exactly. 1.8 times 10 is 18, so 1.8 rem. 18 pixels is not big enough. Let's do 24. Not even that small. I'm going to zoom in a little bit for us. All right. So we have our H1, and then let's do a margin bottom of 10 pixels. And remember, we can use pixels for height. You want me to do 7.2? That'd be massive. We'll do 7.2 in a little bit. Height, we can do pixels in because height is a set stationary value, right? Whereas width, we don't really care about the height of the device because vertical scroll bars are okay for us, right? From a UI UX perspective, vertical scroll bars are fine. Everyone expects a vertical scroll bar. You know, it even comes to the point where if it looks like your page should scroll and it doesn't, then people kind of weirded out by it, right? So vertical scroll bars are fine. So we can use, you know, these very specific set in stone pixel widths or pixel heights. Width, on the other hand, horizontal scroll bars are not okay, right? We will always want there to be no horizontal scroll bar. And since we have such a varying degree of devices, that's why we use this percentage-based widths and with a max width, with a constraint on it. All right. And let's do a little centering trick here. So we get this centered. So yeah, now let's look. Our box here will go down to 700. And when it gets to 700, it will just keep shrinking. It won't, and let's make this bigger so we can make sure that that's actually working. Yeah, cool. So it won't get until it gets really small, but that's even smaller than any normal device. Cool. All right. So this is our percentage base, and let's come in here and let's do a container P, and we'll give it a font size of 1.6. Oh, not 1.6 pixels, 1.6 rem. And it needs to be spelled font. All right. So now we've got this little thing set up. So what happens if we are building a site and say this is our main container on one of our pages, and say we have another container. Oh, where did that work? Another container on another page that's not our agency, but it's like a contact us. Contact us. And then say, here is our contact info, etc. Right? But our design department said on this form, we want our background to be light gray, and on this form, we want it to be standard transparent, right? How would we go about making it so that these shared the same kind of similar, the same width, height, padding, margin, etc., making second class, exactly. So that's exactly what we want to do. And so we have this container, and we have this container class that gives us a lot of really cool layout stuff, right? Our width, our max width, the border, padding, margin, all of that. But sometimes we want to be able to grab the actual item inside of it, or that specific instance of the container. So let's do home, and let's do contact form. All right, so now we have a home container and we have a contact container. So we can take our home, and I said that we wanted home to be transparent, but let's do aqua for those of you that love aqua so much. Background color. And notice that contact us isn't changing. And we're going to do contact, BG color is light gray. All right, cool. And I want to give it a little bit of top and bottom margin. Separate them a little bit. All right. So now we can keep these, this container, these rules on all containers. And now, since we have another, class on them, we can now extend some rules to them. So let's say on our first one that we were okay on home, we're okay with the standard. Well, let's do home. Actually, let's change it a little bit. Home, and then we're going to say H1, and going to change our font size. For home, we want it to be 36, 3.6. Right, it's bigger, and then for contact, that's fine, right? But in contact, we want our color. Let's see, blanched almond. I was going to say red again for now. Cool. So now we can go in and be specific on the exact item. Right, so why, if I had color on here, let's just say I had color on this one, and it was blue. On the container, which one of these, would this one or this one take precedence? Which one would be, what would be blue or red? I want the and why? Why would it be red? Looks like everyone's saying red. Everyone's saying bottom, contact, cascading, right? What if I had, let's go class, and we'll say paragraph. What if instead it was that? All right, so I had this one was blue, and this one was red. Which one would it be, blue or would it be red? Still red. Oh yeah, I like it. This is like 50-50 now. Perfect. I got some reds, got some blues in here. Check it out. All right, so the red took precedence, right? So let's see. The red took precedence. I'm a little surprised by it because classes hold a higher specificity level than regular. Maybe they don't. Maybe they hold the same specificity level. I thought that classes held a higher specificity level than element tags. So the fact that it's still red. Huh, okay. Well, there you go. Let's go like this. Did I spell it right? Anyways, all right. I'll have to play around with more specificity stuff. Font size works. Container, paragraph. Oh, yeah, there we go. Sorry. That's not what I meant to do. I wanted to do this. That's my mess up. All right. There we go. Okay. So the paragraph is on the class, the contact class. All right. And so paragraph, the class, is more specific. Okay. Is more specific than an element tag. And so when you add them all up, there's like a CSS specificity weight chart. You can go in. Oh, there's a calculator there, and you can see how specific something is. Right. So It'll give you, they say that like an element selector is a 1, a class selector is a 2, an ID is like a 10, important is like 10,000. I mean, I don't even think important has a number to it. But there's a way to add them up. Just know that elements are the least specific. So if there's a class and a class and a class and an element, it's always going to be the class and the class. IDs are very specific. IDs are more specific than 9 classes in a row, right? Inline styles are more specific than IDs, and important is more specific than anything, but don't use it unless you are protecting that and not overriding something else. So if you are protecting the class, you're like, I want to make sure that nobody changes this. That's when you would use important. If you are trying to get something to change and it's not working, don't use important. Figure out the specificity of that item and use more specific selectors. Cool. Any questions on any of this right now? Important is cheating, and it goes beyond cheating. It's like taking the really, really easy way out and like screwing yourself over in the future is what important is. Potential confusion inherent in this discussion. The reason to use BEM. BEM is just a different way of keeping track of your elements, right? So those of you that looked up and were playing around with BEM, BEM is not a technology. It is simply an idea. It's a naming convention. We used to go over it in class, but we realized that we could use our time a lot better. I've never worked on a team that's used BEM, but I would say every team I've been on uses their own internal naming convention, but BEM is the go-to naming if you're just looking for something. And it really, really works out a lot. It's nice, especially if you have a very large project. It's an idea, right? BEM is just an idea. It's not anything set in stone. There's nothing that's going to say you used it wrong, because all it is an idea. Cool. Any other questions on the specificity stuff and getting this all to line up well? And questions on font sizes, using the 62.5%, any of that? Well, we're going to dive into less right now, at least. See some typing. I'll give you 1 minute, and then it's less time. Or preprocessors in general, using less. Yep. Better to use Flexbox to center or use Margin Auto? If I wanted to center these items on the screen, how would I do Flexbox to do that? How would I use Flexbox to do that? It's valid. I just want to know. I don't think that there's a such thing as a better of the two. If you're just trying to get it to horizontally center. So yeah, you'd have to do all of your flex stuff, display flex, justify content center, align item center, maybe. There's two things here. So what if we wanted them to be on top of each other, etc. So we'd have to do that on the body, right? We have to go into our body and say display flex, etc. Right? This allows us, if all we want to do is horizontally center something, if that's all you want to do this. Okay? Do the Margin Auto. If you want to position items on the screen other than just horizontally centering them, then use the flex box. Ryan, why not on the container? Okay, so if I say display flex on the container, what is my flex box? My flex boxes are each of these, right? These are my flex containers now. If I say justify content center, my gosh, then it's going to be the children. That's what I'm affecting, right? So if I wanted to position the containers themselves in the center, then we do it on the body. So it's always the parent container. Yep. Cool. Yeah, so if all you want to do is horizontally center, use the auto. It's no need to go through and write much more CSS. And especially if you don't want, maybe you don't want everything on the page centered, right? Inside of your body. Maybe you want some other things to go left or right, etc. So it's a use case thing, right? All right. So now that we have gotten here, let's start talking about preprocessors, what they are, what they do, and how we use them. So a preprocessor, essentially, is a way to write, and I'll pull up our training kit. It is a way to write code that will then get pulled through a compiler and will get outputted as CSS. Okay, that's all a preprocessor is. We write it in a certain syntax, which we're going to be using less in this class. That syntax gets put through a compiler, which Les uses JavaScript, and then it outputs a CSS file. And all it is plain old regular CSS, right? Our browser can't read less. Our browser can't read Sass or Stylus or any of the other preprocessors. Our browser can only read CSS. And so we use a preprocessor to write syntax that makes it quite possibly less code, no pun intended. But most of the time we use preprocessors because it makes it writing CSS more intuitive. And it makes it easier for us to read and to write CSS. I guarantee that once you start using preprocessors, you're going to become much faster at writing CSS. Based on selectors alone, you're faster. Jorge, yep, reusable. And so it's just a much more robust CSS language. And it compiles to CSS. And we'll go over that and the compiler at the very end of class tonight. But yeah, absolutely. Jorge touched on a good point, reusable. Luis talked about variables. Variables are so awesome in CSS. We have functions. We have all kinds of amazing things. Mix-ins. So there are many different options out there for our preprocessors, right? For this step right here. There are, I can think of 4 very popular ones: Less, Sass, Stylus, Post CSS. There are more than that. And the thing about preprocessors are, there's really very little difference in them. And so I just want to show you the difference between Less and Sass real quick. Let's go over a quick variable. You're going to see that I'll go over variables in just a moment. They use a little @ symbol, right? Let's go look at Sass. Sass uses a $sign, right? That's it. That's like one of the only differences between Less and Sass. The biggest difference between Less and Sass, Sass, by the way, probably does have the largest market share, right? I would say that there are going to be, 75% or more of job listings that are asking for a preprocessor are going to ask for Sass over Less. But like I said, you're going to learn less. And in learning less, you will be able to transition over to Sass in an hour or less. But the biggest differences are that Less uses JavaScript to run and compile, right? our compile stage for less is JavaScript based using Node, and you will have it installed tonight, and we'll go over our whole installation of it tonight. SAS uses Ruby, and Stylus uses Python, and I don't know what PostCSS uses. They are the same. Essentially, they're all the same. You know what happens is when one of them has like a really great idea and implements it well, and it like works out really well, the other ones implement it too. And you know what eventually happens is when one of them has a good idea and implements it well and everyone loves it, the other ones get it, and then it makes its way into the CSS protocol, and it becomes actual CSS. So variables, there are actual variables on CSS now, not widely supported, but there are variables in CSS. And so a question comes up often is like, you know, and I think it came up in this class in our chat last week, was like, oh, well, it says like this is going to go out of style and this is going to happen, and we're not going to have to use this anymore. And yeah, that's going to happen throughout our entire careers, right? We are not going to use less for our entire careers. And hopefully, one of these days, all of this is going to be part of CSS, right? And when it is part of CSS, then we won't have to use preprocessors anymore. But until that point, this is what we do now. And we stay ahead of the game. We learn to learn, and we learn to learn new technologies. And it's a really awesome thing about being in this career is you never stop learning here, because new stuff is always coming out, and it makes our lives better and easier for the most part. Who controls CSS? I believe W3 controls CSS. Not W3 Schools, W3. Oh man, World Wide Web Consortium. All right, so W3C, excuse me, and they're you can go on here and learn about all standards. There we go. So this is who does HTML, CSS, all of this stuff. And it's a nonprofit organization made up of people from the entire industry. Well, does it need an update, or is it designed this way on purpose? It's just made up for people of all over the industry. So you probably have someone from Google, Chrome on the board. You got someone from Safari on the board. You got some really amazing developers on the board, and it's a large board, and then they get tasked with figuring out how to implement new things, etc. So W3C, World Wide Web Consortium. And thankfully, the W3C exists because if any of you know about browser prefixes with CSS, they are the ones that make it so we have to do those less and less now. Cool. I wanted to show you SAS, how it is identical to CSS or to less. And yeah, so essentially they're all the same with different syntax. All right. Let's go play with some less now. So, like I said, we are going to have to go through and install a bunch of stuff onto our machines. We'll do this later tonight. If you have not done it already, you can do it later tonight. There are some great instructions, some step-by-step instructions on here to getting this stuff installed. And like I said in the chat earlier, we have put time into this project knowing that this might take you a little while. All right, it might take you an hour. If it takes you an hour, that's fine. If it takes you 5 minutes, that's fine. Yeah, this is our training kit. This is all part of our syllabus. So you go to Full Stack, Responsive Design and Preprocessors, Preprocessing 1, and then there are different instructions for different machines, right? And there's also some YouTube videos that Josh, our wonderful instructor Josh Nell, made. So great to bring that up, Steve. Don't use npm. Use yarn. Yarn installs in a place so you don't have to use sudo. If you are already used to using npm, go with it. But we use Yarn pretty much exclusively in this course, and Yarn will not make it so you don't have. Will make it so you don't have to use sudo. But there are instructions. If you are on a Mac, follow these instructions. If you're on a Windows PC, follow these instructions. If you are on a Linux machine, virtually the same instructions as Mac, but you're not using Homebrew, you'll use whatever package manager. It might just be apt-get on Linux. Yeah, James, Patrick has sent every single student their login name and password. Search for Patrick Kennedy's DM to you, and you'll have it there. All right. So we do have to go through all this stuff eventually, but for right now, we don't. CodePen is really cool and really friendly for us and gives us the ability to include less on our own. So I want to show you something real quick. I want you to look at this code. I want you to look at this page, and I want you to see me include less. We're going to go CSS preprocessor. We have this drop down, and look, less is SCSS as well. I thought that was just SAS. We're going to use less. We're going to save, and look at that. Look at how much stuff changed. It didn't change. Nothing changed because less will read CSS just like normal. If you write just plain old-fashioned CSS into your less file, that's totally fine, right? But you also have the ability to write less. Exactly. All less is CSS with some more extended functionality. So you can write all the plain CSS you want in your less file. So the first thing we're going to talk about today are variables. Variables. Oh no, we're not going to talk about variables yet. We're going to talk about nesting. Sorry. Cool. So now that we have our less, you can see it right here that we can use less. We're going to talk about nesting. So I can say all of this container stuff applies to our container class, right? It'll apply to our class. With CSS, if I want to apply styles to all the H1s in the container, I have to do it like this. Unless I don't have to do this. I can simply nest this within the container class. And now it's taken in. So it will say like, okay, all these rules apply to the container, and then all these rules apply to all of the H1s within the container. We can do the same for paragraph, right? And so I'll say that writing in less or any preprocessor might not make you write less CSS, right? It might not, you might be writing the same, and you might be writing more code when you write in the preprocessor. What preprocessors do are abstract away a lot of the things that you don't have to worry about anymore. So now, check this out. So this is less, right? This is not valid CSS, right? It's not. This is less, but CodePen, which is awesome, automatically runs our less through a less compiler and outputs it as CSS to our page. And if we ever want to see that output, we can click on this little drop arrow and say view compiled CSS. And now look, it's essentially the same exact code that we had written before, right? It is using the specificity that we had written before, okay? And this is our compiled CSS. This is our CSS file. So when it compiles to CSS, it writes the same exact thing, but it just makes it easier for us to write it. And exactly, great point, Christopher. Look at this right here, this bit of code from line 10 to 26, and then look at our HTML. It's virtually in the same exact format, right? We've got our container, which is the top level. We've got our H1 inside of the container. We've got our paragraph inside of the container, etc. So it really lines up with your HTML much more. Connor, no. Well, yeah, you can do that. Yes, sorry. I thought you meant the other way around. I thought you meant write CSS and then have it uncompile to CLS. But yeah, you can do that. But we're going to learn to do it on our own tonight, on our own computer. That's correct, Julie. Julie said, so H1 nested inside of the container. The container's properties are still only applied to the container. Yeah, these are only applied to the container, right? These are only applied to the H1 inside of the container, etc. And we could have, let's do the div, and we can do an A tag in there, and we're going there, and we're going to say lambda. And we can then do this. Check this out. We can go div, and then inside of our div, we can go a anchor tag, and then we can say font size of 1.6 row. There we go. And we can do a text declaration of none. Okay, and look, and it's virtually, let's come in here, the same exact syntax as we see in our HTML. Before and after can be nested, and we're not going to talk about that today. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But yes. So this brings us to a good point here now. Just because we can nest everything, does that mean we should nest everything? And the answer to that is an astounding no. We should not nest everything. You really, not even 4 layers. If you get 4 layers deep, you're too nested. Because what is this doing, right? Let's look at our compiled CSS. I mean, that's pretty okay. If we had one more layer on here, that would be a really specific item. And by that time, we're essentially just writing an ID, right? It's going to be very difficult for you to go in there anywhere else in your CSS and change something on, if there was like another layer deep, okay? But you can do this, right? You don't have to, let's say we were at class right here. Anchor. This is just an example. This is not anything that we would actually do. Anchor. So now it's going to go and find all of the, it's going to go and find all of the anchor tags within the class, right? And that could be buried multiple levels deep, right? But we really don't want it to be more than 3 levels, is what we want our nesting to be. So, yeah, don't nest it more than 3 layers deep. It's just a good rule of thumb to have. That's correct, Jesse. It would be selecting all the divs inside the container. Yep. No, I used a class on that, right? So I gave the anchor tag a class of anchor. So now it's only going to find all of the anchor tags within the container, right? So it's going to go and find all of the anchor tags. It could be anchor tags everywhere else, right? If we had, all the anchor classes. There could be other anchor classes in here. It's just showing you that you can nest it and you can select items within this container using that class, right? That's one way to get around the 3-layer deep idea. Any other questions right now with nesting? Same thing, Derek. It would do the same exact thing. But with less, you really don't want to do that. And we'll actually show you. I'm actually going to show you a way towards the end of class tonight. So Derek asked, for those watching on the video and those that can't see Slack, how does nesting work if we are selecting multiple classes for a property, such as class 1, comma, class 2, comma, class 3, etc.? We really don't do that with less. We're going to use mix-ins, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. And we really don't need to select multiple classes like that any longer. Yeah, Christopher. To specify another class is basically a workaround to avoid deeper layers. And we can start it too. We don't have to start it in there. We can say div anchor outside. Well, we don't want to do that. But you know what I'm saying? We can, if the div had a class on it, div class, I can say div class anchor and do this, right? We don't have to start at the top. You don't have to start at the top, okay? You can start anywhere you want. Any class you would select, any idea that goes well. And so, let's think about this right now. Does this container have a div with an anchor tag in it? No. It might just be that this is a one-off, right? It might just be that this is the only one that has it. So does it make sense to put this code within all of the container stuff? No, you're going to separate that out because none of those other containers need to know about that stuff. So that would be one way of getting around the no more than 3 layers deep idea. The whole thing is just that we can now nest, and it now automatically gives us that specificity we wanted. Really cool stuff. And it makes more sense. It just makes more sense. To me, it does. Seeing CSS written like this and knowing like, okay, all the H1s inside of the container, all of the paragraphs inside of the container. The purpose seems to be for better organization. Correct. Too many layers defeats that purpose. Not really. It doesn't really defeat the organization purpose. Let's do this. Let's go div. Oh. Before we go to break, I'll do this one thing for you, and we'll see it. Div layer 1. All right. This is a really and then we say not px, rem, I don't know why I keep typing pixels. Boom, there we go, hi, okay. Yeah, it does look like callback hell. But you'll see that we're layered 5 layers deep on this. Now let's go look at our compiled code. Look at that. How insanely specific is that, right? That's very, very, very specific. So specific, in fact, that you're probably never going to be able to do anything else with that paragraph unless you put it in that code, right? you'll never be able to give this paragraph a name or class and say like class font 36, something like that, and then be like, okay, not going to work, right? You're better off using an ID. Exactly, Trevor. And if you do give an ID, it would take precedence. But at that point, why don't we just give it an ID, right? And use just an ID selector here, you know? Absolutely. And so that's the reason we don't go that deep with our selectors, our nesting, I should say. Cool. Let's take a 5-minute break. Come back at 56 after. All right, 56. Ready? Questions? All right. One really cool thing about Less is that we are allowed to write single line comments. So before, with CSS, the only way to write a comment was our / asterisk. You could write a single line comment in here. Dingle line. But this was essentially a multi-line comment. Since this is JavaScript, we can write a regular comment. And those of you that know JavaScript, which I hope everyone knows some JavaScript, then we can write a JavaScript-esque comment. So we can just say, you know, if we're wondering what this selected, we can say like, oh, this, you know, just so we keep our mind like, okay, yeah, you know, etc. So we can write single line comments in here. Yep, exactly. And since this is JavaScript, it just writes it as a JavaScript comment. And check this out. When it compiles it, oh, it doesn't bring the comment in. Oh, I thought it would. I guess it doesn't. Can't read comments in JavaScript, so yeah, so it doesn't compile the comments in there. All right, never mind. I thought it compiled it to a CSS comment, but it makes sense. It doesn't. So yeah, we can use JavaScript-esque commenting in here. One little cool feature about it. All right, nesting comments. Cool. Let's also. You have seen the. Stefan, that is because that's a CS. Oh, I guess that's a JavaScript comment as well. I wonder. I'll look into that. That's kind of odd. I've already showed you the kind of the start of the Less docs, right? Showed you where they are, what they are. So from this point on, and you've already been in it before, reading stuff on MDN. That's JavaScript, CSS docs. Learning to read docs is a hugely important part of being a software engineer, especially a web developer, in that you're going to be reading a lot of documentation. And Less has pretty decent docs. MDN has like the crown jewel of docs, but they're really hard to read because they're incredibly technical. But as far as docs go, they have every little thing on there. There are some awful docs that we'll see much later on in this course, but we just have to deal with them. But Less has some pretty good docs. And it just goes straight into it. You know, a lot of times you'll have to click on documentation. I guess in-depth guide can work. But let's go right into our docs. And here we are, right in it already. So we're going to first talk about variables. Variables are, this is a bad doc explanation. These are pretty self-explanatory. Well, not really, but we'll explain it a little bit better. Variables. So variables allow us to keep access to certain amount of data. And that data we can then reuse throughout our code. So that's essentially what a variable is, and it lends itself a lot to variables in JavaScript. And obviously, since it's compiled using JavaScript, we can use them like we do in JavaScript. So sort of. Sorry. Okay, so let's do something. Let me grab something that we are using more than once. Whatever. We can just do whatever we want. Okay, normally, when you're writing less, our variables, you want to include them at the top. Okay, I would say under the reset, but and you probably have a reset in a different less file, but we'll talk about that as well on Wednesday. You want to include them in the top so that we know we can just, as developers, if someone else is using our code, writing our code, that they would know exactly where our variables are. Abdil, you say, I imagine they're all global variables. I'm going to say no, they're not all global variables, but they're not scoped. They're only scoped to this file. So let's keep that in mind. And if you don't know what that means, that's okay. So how do we write a variable? Let's write it like we give it an @ sign, and we'll give it a name. So we'll say this one is red. This is a really bad example. We're not going to say red. We're going to say border color. Oftentimes, your variables are going to be colors. They're going to be sizes. They're going to be a font size, or etc. A width or a margin. So this variable, our border color, is going to be red. And let's do some other stuff in here. One thing to know about these variables are that they are lazy loaded, what's known as lazy loaded, in that they are loaded last. So it doesn't matter where in this file our variable exists, it will always work as a variable, unlike JavaScript. So those of you that are familiar with JavaScript, you can't just write a variable inside of CSS right here and it work in anything else. But that is the case with variables in less. So now that we have our first variable, we can now use it. So let's go and use our border color here. And we say @border color, just like that. And we shouldn't have seen any change to it whatsoever, right? Because it's both red. And we can use our variable wherever we would use that word red, right? And this doesn't have to be red. It can be the CSS or the hex equivalent of red, which that's actually the hex equivalent of red. And we can use it anywhere we want. Can anyone think of like a really good reason why we use variables? Let's think of some good reasons why we use them. Reusability, update CSS fast, reusable. Let's think of like some more I've got to think of how to say this. Let's think of an example, say professionally, if you would think, in case you want to make widespread changes to the look. I love it, Paul. Mass changes later. Repetition, okay. Easier to read, yes. But yeah, create themes, right? So say you come, this is going to be a real world example of using variables in less. Your design team is going to come to you and they're going to say, here are your 5 colors. This one is our main color. So you're going to have, that main color. And your main color is going to be aqua, of course, right? And then you're going to have a border color, and you're going to have a drop shadow color, which will be Dodger blue. And then you're going to have a secondary color, We'll make this one. Is blanched almond a real color? I hope it is. Cool. And then let's come in here and let's change some stuff. I'm going to say at secondary color. Blanched almond, look at that. That's an awesome one. And let's come in somewhere else and we'll go into our A tag here and we'll say color. I know I said drop shadow color. Okay, let's call it link color. And I'll be like, we don't have a link color. We're going to rename this one. All right. So you have these colors all set up and you develop this whole page using all of your colors on here, right? And you have this amazing website and all the colors work in perfect harmony with each other. And then your design team comes and says, scrap all that. We're going to change to these new colors. This is going to be the new main color. This is going to be the new border color. This is the new link color. This is the new secondary color. And you have to go in and be like, let's go. Our border color is going to, I'm just going to write a really random that's our new border color, right? And boom, all of a sudden, your changes are rippled across your entire site, okay? And you've only had to change it one time, right? You only had to change it once, and now every single thing that you gave border color to, you don't have to go through and Control F and search for border and figure out where you've changed things and where you got to change it. You change it one time, and it takes place throughout your entire file. That's what's awesome about variables. Variables are probably one of my favorite things in Less and in any preprocessor. And CSS variables do exist now. Because this is one of those things that upcoming CSS properties see. They're not really actually implemented yet, but they will be soon. And yeah, we're going to have variable, the ability to write variables in CSS. And remember when I said cool things that are really cool and that get widespread use and that everyone loves, eventually they'll make their way into the standard, right, into the web standard. But for now, we have the ability to use variables in our Less files. And so this is a concept known as interpolation, to where nothing's really happening here except when it compiles, all it does is change this to whatever it equaled, right? So all it's doing as it's compiling is it's going to remove that, and it's going to say, what does that equal? Oh, it equals this. There we go. And then our CSS is going to compile to that. And let's check it out. Interpolation. Look at that. There we are. B00513. CSS Tricks is my go-to CSS site. Christopher asked where's the best place to stay up to date with CSS standards they add. They don't add CSS standards very often. Things that when big things that you see happening with HTML and CSS are pretty few and far between, just because if you change things a lot, then browsers are going to be all over the place. So they make sure they have like a good solid set of items that they want to change, and they'll do big updates. JavaScript, on the other hand, is changing like every month, it seems. Not changing, they're just adding stuff. Cool. Those are variables. Anyone have any questions on variables? Variables are really, really cool. Like margin, we'll say 15 pixels. And now instead of doing that, we can just go in and change. That was the only thing with one margin, huh? And now we can say like, oh, Can you store a variable to store an entire template for a web page? Yeah, you can. To use an entire template for a web page, yeah, you can. It's a little bit more advanced than what we're going to go over today, but my very first engineering position, we had like 5 different themes, and we were able to switch back and forth on our themes. Since it uses the @ symbol, does media get affected? No, but we're going to go over media in a little bit. Can we store different properties inside of one variable? No. And your second question, is that why we use mixins? Yes. Would a variable for font style be another good application? Absolutely. Yeah. Or font family. Yeah, that'd be a great application. But usually you'll put font family on your body or your HTML. But no, like anything that you want to reuse, right? Anything you want to reuse, anything you use, I would say more than once or twice on your page, put it in a variable, especially if those 2 items are linked together. Obviously, if you have a margin of 15 on one item and margin of 15 on the other item, doesn't mean that you always want to change both of them at the same time, right? So if you have shared code or shared, I mean, it comes to the colors. I think are the biggest benefactors of variables are the colors. Oh man, once you set your whole page up, it allows you to play with colors so much. It's really fun to do. Yeah. Calculations. We'll talk about calculations and functions on Wednesday. Paul, that is a great question. Do you spend a lot of time up front before a project planning out what will be reusable, or is it a do as you go along kind of thing? Do as you go along is probably what most teams do, unless you have an amazing design team that says, we're going to do this, 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 and this is what all of our stuff's going to look like. So you can set everything up ahead of time. Setting it up ahead of time obviously pays off in the end, but it also adds a lot more time before you actually even get started. So many people don't like that. But it depends on the team. Like the answer to 90% of the questions I answer depends on the team you're on. Is this how companies make color themes to their apps and sites? Yes. Can you override variables if you want to change things up? I don't know why you would do that, Levi, but I would say no right now. I guess you could, if I had. So let's talk about this. Great, that brings me into this. I can put this at the bottom, and I want to say, I just want to say green. See what happens. So why did our here turn green? Cascading effect, right? Also, look at this. I'm using secondary color I'm declaring it way after I'm using it. That's what I meant by lazy loading. So it loads all of these variables last. It loads these variables last. And yeah, I guess you could override it, but I would not advise that. I hate that, Steve. Opposite of hoisting. Oh, let's not get there. Let's not go there right now. We'll go there in JavaScript week. But just know that the variables themselves are loaded last. So you can declare your variables wherever you want. You can declare it like inside of this. Why didn't that work? Should have worked. Yeah. I would say declare all your variables at the top. If you want to change it, change it. But you can't have multiple values for one variable. No, Marcus. I mean, you can change it, but it's going to take precedence over your entire less file. You can't change it for one specific thing. And if that's the case, then just create a new variable. I mean, Michael, there's just really no reason to have an undefined variable with less. Cool. Well, I mean, if variables are awesome to you, let's hop into our next little awesomeness, and that's a mix-in. Can variables act as selectors? That's a great question, Dimitri, and we are actually going to go over that on Wednesday. Mix-ins. Let's go talk about mix-ins now. Mix-ins. So let's say, man, I got like two things that are being run by the container. Let's say we did want to display flex and justify. We wanted to center all of our stuff on here. And I'm going to go flex flow, column. Let's do flex direction. Column. All right, we wanted to center our stuff on here. So what we could do, and this is going to be crazy, we might have to take a minute to think about this. We can give it a class name of centered column. And we can take all of this code. We can put it into here. Right? So this is a class name of centered column, which has the display flex, justify content center, line item center, flex direction column. We add open and closing parentheses to it. And now we can use this wherever we want in our code. And this is known as a mix-in. Okay? This is repeatable code. Right? So that's why someone was asking about if we want to do something like this and give that all, not yet, give that all similar code. That's what this is doing here. We can give similar code to all of the classes we want. We're not passing parameters today. And we just give it like we're writing. Boom. Like we're writing, we just added a class to our container. No, Javier. So the mixin isn't specified in the HTML, just in the less. That is correct. It's only specified in the less. But look at this. Let's check this out. Let's go view our compiled CSS. And where is that centered column at in our compiled CSS? It's not in here, right? Look at that. It's not in here at all. But all of that code is in container. Okay. And we can use that as many times as we want. Let's go right. So another div. So create another div. I want to get rid of that. Let's go one layer instead. Just going to call it layer 1. But we're going to do the same thing. H1. More stuff. Even more code to see. So layer 1, and we will say width of 100%. Oh. Max width of 600 pixels. Margin 0 auto. Border 10 pixels, solid border color. Boom. Padding, 25 pixels. We'll just give it some padding. Which one? Font size, 6 round. All right, so we have this completely different div here now, right? I mean, it's different because it has a different border, it's different width, even though it stays 100% on us. And now I just go, and there we go, boom. Now we can use this center column any place we want to have display flex, justify content, align items, flex direction. We can just put that center column onto that item and it will inherit all of that code. So we write that code once. So essentially a mixin is a variable for a block of CSS, right? So someone had asked, can we do that for selectors, etc. So it's a block for CSS. It's a variable for block CSS. It's really, really powerful stuff, right? And this is where we get to the point where we are writing less code. I know every single one of you in your Flexbox stuff has written flex or display flex, justify content center, align item center, display flex, justify content center, align item center, over and over and over again. And now you can write those three things in one block, and then just use that one mixin for all the times you would need to use it. And you're going to start to see repetition over and over again in your CSS. You're like, I am using these three things together every single time, right? I'm using these three things always. And now you can abstract that out of your CSS, write it one time, and then just write one line of code in. So you have... Christopher asked if you could add to the end of it. You can. It's not going to do anything right now. We'll talk about parametric mixins on Wednesday, and we'll be able to add items into there, but we're not talking about that today. We're using regular old mixins. And exactly, Jorge, this allows us to write dry code. Dry CSS. Those of you that don't know, dry is do not repeat yourself. We want to repeat ourselves as little as possible when writing code, right? And this allows us to write it once and use it as many times as we want in our CSS, okay? So this is something definitely where we say, if you use a block of code more than twice in your CSS, if you use, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many, 2 or more CSS rules together more than twice, write a mixin for it. It'll make your life a lot easier. And now, then, look at this. We can just go in and say, it just went and did that all for us, right? One of those really awesome things. Or we can go flex end. Oh, not on column. That's right. Etc. Well, I should have been able to do flex end on. What? Oh, I guess it's height. That's right. Never mind. If I had a different height set on it. But, etc. You can't do flex in, or you can do flex in on items, but it's going to go the other way. I wanted it to go all to the bottom, and it is all the way at the bottom. So, cool. So, another really cool thing with mixins, this is also going to be a little mind-blowing, is going to be, let's go font, What's something I can do on here? Something I can change. Let's just do border. Border. And I'll go border. Let's go border blue. We'll do 5 pixel solid link color. All right. And now I can go border blue on here. And there we go. And now this mix-in will take the values from this mix-in and put them all into there. All right. We'll put them all into there. So now we just used a mix-in within another mix-in. And you can do that as many times as you want. Do you have to put the mix-in at the top of the CSS file? No, but it is it's recommended you do it that way. Okay. Definitely recommended. And we'll get even crazier with mix-ins on Wednesday. But you see, like, you can, I know that there's a bunch of wheels turning in your heads. Probably some of you are like, what is even going on? And some of you are like, the possibilities are endless, right? They are absolutely endless. And it just allows us to reuse code over and over again. Repeatable code. So these are mix-ins. Yeah, we'll go over that, Luis, on Wednesday again. Sorry, this is a 2-part lesson with a project in between. And no, that's fine. You know, ultimately we'll have a separate file for variables. Ultimately we'll have a separate file for mix-ins. Each of our own less files will have their own variables, but with reusable mix-ins and all kinds of stuff. It gets really fun. But, you know, like I said, anytime you see yourself writing a whole lot, like if I say container width 100% max width, we can just do max width 700. You know, and I can even, I know I said 600 on that one, but I'll just do 700 on both of them. Uh-oh, an error. Where's my error at? Unrecognized input. Oh. There we go. Right? Very cool stuff. Stefan, you're actually going to want to do the opposite. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. You'll actually want to use a lot of less files for one CSS file. But that's another Wednesday idea and import statements. I know someone who uses Sass and has one file for color, another for font size. Totally, all right. That is a common use case. Moises, wonder if less variables are cross-file. They can be, and we'll talk about that on Wednesday as well with import statements. But yeah, we can use variables from one file and another. But we're only worried about one less file for today and tomorrow. Okay? We're only dealing with one less file today and tomorrow. All right. Any other questions? Less is beautiful. I love less. The puns are endless. We're going to go over one more thing tonight, which is really cool. Yeah, it depends on if you find it really cool. I think mix-ins are probably the most mind-blowing, mix-ins and variables. But this other thing is really cool as well. I have never used less professionally. I've used Sass, and I've used vanilla CSS. But the reason we are learning less, I told you in the front of the class, and literally they're the same exact thing. Because you're going to have to install Node and all those fun things anyways, so we're just taking one less step. Ooh, one less step. Same, yep. That's the only difference between less and Sass, essentially. Well, other than the fact that it's Ruby. There's Sass, there's less. Cool. All right. So the last thing we're going to talk about are media queries and actually nesting media queries. So this is a semi-controversial idea. I wouldn't say this is very controversial. This is a semi-controversial idea in that we can, before, let's go media, and we'll do a max width of 600 pixels. And let's grab our container. So container, and let's just do background color of secondary color. All right. So we have our normal, plain old regular media query. Okay. So we're going to come down to 600 pixels. We're like, oh, at 700, we're okay. We're responsive down to 600. And then there we go. At 600, our background color changed to our secondary color. And remember, that's a variable, and we can change that color to anything we want, whenever we want. You know, we're just using that as our cool. So, you know, with our media queries, many of you were asking last week, do we write one media query for one class, for one item? Do we write one media query for all classes at that size? And this is really going to come down to your personal preferences, but this is a really cool thing with Sass. So we can now nest our media queries. All right. And we don't have to do this. Or we can't. Let's go look at it. We can nest our media queries. Let's go boom, 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 boom. Where are we at? Nesting. There we go. All right, should have worked. Maybe we're not at 600. Oh, we weren't at 600. No, still not working. All right, let's figure out why this isn't working. Media, in container. We don't have a background color. We don't. Where's our background color being set? Ah, there it is. Okay, that's why. All right, let's go back down here and do this. Our background color is being set in these guys. So there we go. It was a specificity issue. All right. Jorge asks, media queries look a lot like a mixin. Well, it looks a lot like a variable, right? How does Les know the difference? Les checks for what it says. If it says media, it treats it like a media query. If it says anything else, it treats it like a mixin or a variable. Why do you want to nest media queries? What's the value? Great question, Stefan. So we have our media query here. Let's say we have our media query here. Instead of background color, we do color, right? What the value is, and that's why I say it's kind of, you know, not 100%. agreed upon, is that if I know what my object is, right? I know that this is home. Okay. I'm like, oh, like just now, I'm like, oh, I don't see us setting a background color in here. Where are we setting the background color? Oh, we're setting it down in here. That's right. Okay. So now I know that I can find the element, the selector that I'm looking for, and I can find all media for it. All right, let's go. Not secondary color, but let's go border color. Right, and now I can find all media queries for it. Right, and I can go in and I can reset it. All right, that's getting way ahead of us. So you can still put all of your media queries at the end. But imagine you have 4,000 lines of lesson here. And you're going to have to, I mean, you probably, a lot of you came across this when you were working on your responsive projects, is that you had this massive list of rules on top, right, as your like main set rules. And then you have this massive list of rules in the media query. You kept having to like, oh, what is the H1 does this. Okay, I'll go down here and I'll change it. Like, oh, where was the H1 again? It was on line 40. I remember line 40. Okay, I'll go change it down here. Or we can come in here now and say, for H1, at media, we want the font size to be not secondary color, but we'll want it to be 1.8 rem. So now you know exactly where to find all of your rules. Oh, where's that at? Okay. Should have gotten smaller. Didn't get smaller. Anyways, you'll know. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now it should work. Okay. But you'll know where all of your rules are at. So that's why we would use nested media queries. Oh, there we go. Yeah, the contact us. That's why we would use nested media queries. Great question, Paul. So look. So it will create separate media queries underneath the elements that we've asked it to, and it will select that element and we'll change it how we asked it. All right. So that's how Les compiles it. Javier, we can. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. So many great questions, so many great leading questions that we're not going to go over tonight, but we will. These are all awesome questions. All right. Let's get some more questions. This is essentially all of the lesson we're going to have tonight. The lesson we'll have tonight. It is a very exciting topic, and I love preprocessors. It really makes your CSS development faster, more clean, and I don't know, it makes it easier for me to develop CSS. I love using preprocessors, and it's hard to write regular CSS anymore. I see some typing, so that's why I'm being silent for a moment, waiting for questions if you have any. It's a lot going on in Slack, but not seeing much. But All right, let's go one more minute. Jorge, is there any difference when assigning color if we use string color names or hexadecimal names? No, no difference. Nope, it's all the same. Just know that those CSS colors, I want to say 99.9% of the time when you are working with a real designer, you will never be using CSS colors. We use CSS colors literally only as placeholders. It's, you know, they're going to be very, very refined, defined colors that they want you to use. Oh, 100%, Javier. There are, I mean, I know the number offhand, but I can't think of it. 1024, maybe 6. I'll think of it. Are we concerned with what less compiles down to in the CSS? As long as you write your less properly, then no, we don't care. It's going to be a big CSS file, and the thing about what our CSS file is once we start writing in less, we are never going to touch our CSS file. Our CSS file will stay where it is, because once you start touching that file and making changes in that file that aren't reflected in the less, that's when you start screwing your team up. That's when people are like, I can't find where we're changing this. I'm like, oh, well, someone went behind you and changed the CSS file. You will never touch the CSS file. Yeah, Michael, if you're concerned about how ugly your compiled code looks, you're in for or if anyone is, you're in for a rude awakening when we get to React and uglifying code, because it's meant to be efficient and not pretty to look at. But our less will be pretty to look at, and our React code will be pretty to look at. Just our compiled code is always going to be ugly. All right. So I am going to give all of you a break, but also I'm going to give you a mini challenge to play around with less. And I'll give it to you in just a moment. So I know some of you are probably already like, where's it at? So this challenge in less is going to be fairly simple, and also a little complex, depending on how you see it. Rules. You cannot change the values of the variables. Variables do not change. You cannot change the HTML. Don't change the HTML. Read the rules. All right? No adding additional color properties. Match the colors with the titles in the boxes. Study the code and rearrange the selectors and variables correctly. So you're going to have to come in here and really pay attention to how your HTML is set up, right? And your class names in here, and how your less is set up and your class names in here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get each of these boxes. That one's going to be red, that one's going to be purple, and that one's going to be black, using only the less, all right? And not adding anything to the HTML, no adding classes or anything like that. You're just going to go through, read the less code, and then you're going to change it the way you want, or the way we've asked for. All right, pretty simple. This is just a little mini, just to get you working and to play around with less. So let's do this. Let's give a 5-minute break. And then after your 5-minute break, oh, you'll get one, Paul. Don't worry. You'll get 10 minutes to work on this. So how about this? In 5 minutes, to make sure that you guys take a break, you are going, I will put the link in Slack, okay? I'll post my link from tonight's lesson, but in 5 minutes, so let's say at 49 after, I'll post my link in Slack. So go to the bathroom, get up, walk around. I know you wanted to get a head start. Everyone did. And get some water, some coffee, whatever you need, and you'll have the link here in 5 minutes. I'll say at 50 now. All right. Am I recording? You see the red dot on the upper left? Cool. All right. So some of you found it easy. Some of you might not have found it very easy. This wasn't really a super difficult challenge. It was only meant to be done in 5 to 10 minutes, right? And if some of you might not have gotten it at all. But let's go over a little solution to it. Essentially, this was things are out of order. Things are using the wrong variable names, things like that. And your job was to identify those areas that it wasn't working properly. So we'll see let's look through our HTML. We have a div with a class of container, right? So that's going to hold all of our other divs. We're going to have box1, box2, and box3. Let's go check it out. So that's the cool thing about Less is that we can see our structure right here. So what's the first thing you notice? The first thing I notice is that box 3 is completely outside of the container, right? And it needs to be within the container for that specificity to work. Because there is where's our background? Our background of green, right, is on the box class. And that is specific to 2 classes, right? It's 2 class specific. So that's much more specific than just the one class here. So this is always going to take precedence unless we come in here and be much more specific. So let's just move that into there. Boom, and there we go. All right. Box 3 is now black. Second thing you notice, who wants to give me something that is wrong with this, they fixed? Anyone? Box 1, wrong color. It is the wrong color. Box 1 background is the variable of purple box, and it says I should be red. And if we come up here and look, purple box is purple. We should change it to red box. Box 1 is red. And then let's see, box 2 is green. Yep. Is 2 nested, right? Yeah, it's nested within the box, right? And it's not, box 2 isn't inside like H1 is. Box 2 is another class on that. So it needs to be outside with the others. And just for the purposes of organization, I'll peg it in the middle of them. And second thing about box 2 is it needs to be purple. Yep. All right, red, purple, black. Cool. I was overthinking this completely. Yeah, maybe, it's like these little minis. If we expect something to be done in 5 to 10 minutes, then it should really, it's not, you don't need to overthink it that much. Indenting help organization, absolutely. These are all indented properly, right? So we have our container, which is leftmost, the 4 items in the container are indented once, and then within that box there's another indentation for H1. Oh, I love indentation as well. If you really, really love indentation, you might love Python, where it's like required. I don't know if CodePen does, but VS Code does. If you go next to your bracket, it'll highlight the next one. It's matching bracket. So a little bit. All right, any other questions on this right now? How's everyone feeling about less? I'm actually gonna do an anonymous poll. All right, anonymous poll up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one? How do you feel about less? And this is anonymous, so you can answer freely without thinking someone can see your answer. I don't think I put a I don't like it on there. I think I put a I think I'll know when I can use it more. I guess I didn't put a I don't like it. I should have. Okay, so the majority of you think it's a game changer. A lot of you really want to get in there and get your hands dirty and use it more. Still not sure, yeah. Anyone that says I'm lost, I really want you to reach out to your PM or the help channel and let's get you on track. But I think that as well, using it more is going to give you a bit more of an idea of what's going on with it. But if you did answer 4, I'm lost, that's totally fine, right? That's what we're here for. I do really want you to reach out to your PM, please. And I know I've kind of flown through a bunch of stuff, and hopefully that playing around with this a little bit more will make you like it more or get you more on track, right? So let's talk about tonight's lesson. Yeah, exactly, Tommy. Here we go. Cool. And that little mini was just to give you a taste of less. Okay, so tonight's lesson is going to be a digital resume. Your long-standing best friend, great idea, is gone. I'm apologize. I'm sorry to say, no more great idea. You might see great idea make a sneak peek in a few weeks, but but great idea is gone. And now we are going to be working on some real I don't know. I think this is going to be a lot of fun for most of you, for all of you, hopefully. And it's actually building a digital resume. So this is going to be your resume, essentially. This is going to be about you. It is not there. There are no limitations to this assignment, right? Better idea. I love it, Moises. There are no limitations to this assignment. This is a this resume example is simply an example, right? We want to give you all the power of over all the last 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, to create your own resume. And this is something that really, you could keep and keep expanding on in the future and actually make it a great portfolio site. But for right now, we just want you to play around with less, to use less, and to build this resume out from scratch. And this portfolio site, I would say. So if you are feeling super creative, now is the time to let those creative juices flow. Go ahead and design and create to your heart's desire. Those of you that feel less creative, by all means, use this template and just go off this template. And then once you get this template done, then you can start playing around with stuff. If your resume looks like that, it's already better than mine. I love that. But, well, yeah, if your resume looks like this right here, it's already better than mine as well. So just keep that in mind. This person has 6 years of developer history at Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon. So this project is going to be task 1, set up the project with Git. You know how to set up a project with Git. I really hope you do by now. If you don't, reach out to your PM, please. Second, set up your preprocessor. So this is going to be a big step in this. And this is why we're gonna break here in just a minute, and you're gonna get started on this tonight. is that we want to make sure that your preprocessor setup, that less is set up on your computer. So as I said before, the instructions to install Node, Yarn, less, and less watch compiler. You need to install these 4 things, right? They need to be running on your machine. The instructions are step-by-step right here, and there are also videos that accompany those instructions. Okay, Josh, our instructor Josh Nell, has created some amazing videos. He has gone through and given you a step-by-step instruction. After all this, a lot of you might still have issues installing this stuff. That is okay. This isn't easy to install. If you have issues installing this stuff, please reach out to your PM tonight or the help channel tonight and get some help installing this. This is going to be important down the road as well, not just for less, but in having Node and Yarn installed are going to be important. You do not exit out of the less terminal, and we'll go over that in just a minute. So getting all this stuff installed, if you use NPM and you already have NPM installed and you're good on using NPM, go for it. We're going to use Yarn for the majority of almost everything in this class from now on. So I would highly suggest installing Yarn. Yarn also allows it so that you don't have to sudo on a Mac, where NPM you will have to sudo. So just keep that in mind as well. Those are people on Mac. On Windows, your step-by-step instructions are very different. Okay, so you're going to need to go through these instructions on your own and get this installed. Can you install Yarn if you have NPM? Yes, you can have both of them installed. So that's fine. I have both of them installed right now. All right. Once you have it installed, you are going to open up your terminal. You are going to type in less C V. So this is how you make sure you have less installed. And it is going to tell you the version of the less compiler you have installed. It might be different than mine. That's okay. You might have a newer version than I do. So once you have it installed, let me get Slack back up here. Sure. See everyone? NPM comes with Node. Correct, but you have to use sudo with NPM. So once you have less, make sure that you have the less compiler installed. You will make sure that you then have the less watch compiler installed. And we'll see why. There we go. No, what am I looking for? Oh, it's over here. Open your terminal and navigate to the pre-processing project using the cd command. So let's go. And we're going to pre-processing. CD, pre-processing, boom. All right. Once in the project's root folder, which is where we're at, run the following command: less watch compiler, less CSS, and let's go over what all of this means, okay? So less watch compiler is going to be a program that runs in our terminal or in our git bash that is going to watch our files, kind of like git, and it's going to watch our less folder. So we're going to say watch the less folder, and then it is going to compile any less files it sees in there and any changes it sees into the CSS folder, right? And it's going to listen specifically for index.less. So hit that, and now watching directory for file changes. Let's open up this project. Oh, not that one. We're going to go File, Open. Pre-processing, Open. All right, so let's go into here. You are going to see that your index.html is nothing. There's literally nothing in here. Let's open that in the browser. It literally says my resume, right? That's it. This is a really cool. This is a blank slate for all of you to really create your own resume in here. Going into the less project folder, there is an index.less file, right? First thing you see in here is your reset. You're going to get a little bit of less of box sizing border box, a little bit of HTML body height of 100%, but all your code you're going to start writing on line 59 or 60. Okay. So you are never going to touch this file. Never, ever, 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 ever. Don't go into your CSS file. Don't touch the CSS file at all. All of your work is going to be done in this less.index file. And I want to show you, we have our watch compiler. I literally copy pasted that. As soon as I was in the pre-processing folder, I copy pasted this watch compiler from the project. Okay. Let's come in here to our less file and let's go, let's just go change our, let's go body, background, color, red. All right, watch over on the left side of my screen as I save this. Whoa, the index.less file was changed, recompiling. Okay, and we can go and look in our CSS file and see that now the CSS file contains that body color. Okay. It will create a regular CSS file for you, but don't worry about that right now. So any changes you make, as long as your watch compiler is running, will automatically be updated. And now you can see that. Michael, great question. The terminal has to be open and it has to stay open. Okay. It can be running anywhere on your computer, but this has to be open. All right. If you close it, it will terminate the less watch compiler. How do you terminate the less watch compiler? Control C. That's how you terminate virtually anything other than Vim in the terminal. Control C. So yes, you do have to have the terminal open. You'll want your watch compiler to be running, and then you don't have to worry about it. You can literally set that in the background, do your work on your less file, and let's go color white. Right? It's automatically doing all this for me now. Let's just go one more. Font size. Well, I just want to do 64 pixels. Right? I'm doing this in my less file, right? And it's automatically recompiling every single time I make a change. Christopher, you can have two terminals open, one for Git, or you can stop your watch compiler and then you can do your Git stuff. And then once you've finished it, restart your watch compiler back up. If you are on a Mac and you use iTerm, you can Control D and you can open up a second window. Or you can open up a new tab in your terminal, whatever terminal you're using. You can do either way. Either way is fine. I normally have multiple terminal windows open at one time when I'm programming. I don't know if that's if you can do this on Git Bash. I don't know. But you can simply Control C, do your Git stuff, and then start it up again. Pretty simple. Or yeah, you can open a new terminal. That's fine. All right. And then check this out. Let's go. I'm going to save this. And it's going to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You wrote some really bad less, right? Something wrong has happened here. You are probably going to see this at some point. Unrecognized input, probably missing a open, I'm not. But then it's going to tell us exactly where it is, right? And it'll say like, oh, you have 64, and then you have, well, I don't even have 64. Oh, line 64, that's what it is. So line 64, it'll tell you what line it's on. It'll say like, we came across this closing. You're going to be like, well, that's funny because I have an open and a closing. Oh, I forgot to put the right thing in here. And you'll save it again. And it'll say, it should say, oh, it worked that time. That's really odd. And then it'll be like, okay, all good, file changed, you're good to go, right? So you're going to see errors. It tells you the line number you're on. right? And this is a common feature in error handling, and it's really, really good to start getting used to seeing errors now, and starting to learn to read the errors. A lot of this stuff, you don't got to worry about that, right? A lot of this stuff doesn't really make sense to us. You got to learn to parse through all of the information an error is giving you and look for the meat of it. And right there, line 64, cool. We know exactly where to go now. Finally, some feedback from the terminal. Yeah, you haven't gotten like fatal error in all red yet. That just meant like you installed something wrong. I get that often. Fatal error. People freak out. What happens if we work on it when the terminal is closed? Once you start up the Let's Watch compiler, it automatically redoes your CSS file for you. So it'll go through and reformat your file for you. And yeah, you can do that. You can, if you want to use the Less compiler and just format it every time yourself, go for it. But the Let's Watch compiler is really nice. Okay, so once you have the Let's Watch compiler started, and you can start it just by adding some stuff to the body and seeing if it changes, right? Saves automatically compile as long as you have the Let's Watch file, Let's Watch compiler running with the folder of less. So that's going to look for the less folder, the folder of CSS. It's going to look for the CSS folder, and it's going to take the index.less file in the less folder and make an index.css file in the CSS folder. That's what this is doing here. But if you don't understand that, that's fine. Just copy paste that in and it'll work for you. As long as your less compiler is working and your Let's Watch compiler is working. Okay? Cool. Once you have that, project objectives. There it is, yeah. Verify your compiler is working by changing the background color on the HTML selector to red. Once you see that red screen, you know it's working, okay? If you don't see the red screen and you're getting crazy errors and nothing's working, reach out to your PM, all right? But give it a little bit. Try to massage it and let it work. You gotta, take some time on your own as well to get it to work. That's why we have extra time tonight. Next is project objectives. Review the example resume. Notice how simplistic the example resume is. Some people might find it simplistic. Develop a simple layout of your choosing. Like I said, this is letting your creative juices flow. If you're struggling to be creative, you may use the example resume, right? So there's going to be some things we ask of you. Having a navigation, 4 items you're choosing. Having an intro, short introduction, having a skills section, work history section, a contact section. If you want to put your actual contact information in here, awesome. If you don't, if you feel weird about it right now, don't worry about it. Put some fake stuff in there. But, like I said, having this in the future as a real portfolio piece and a portfolio, your portfolio with your phone number and email, etc., will go a long way, right? Or a full-on contact form. The contact form doesn't have to work. We don't expect you to know how to have a working contact form yet. Or if you don't feel comfortable, put fake stuff in. Doesn't matter to us. Variables. We want you to incorporate variables in your project for color and font stacks, for font sizes and stuff. Nesting. Every selector should be nested inside of the main container, right? Avoid having global styles unless they're element level. Okay, so we don't want all like regular CSS being written. We want nested CSS in here, I should say. Create 2 mix-ins of your choosing. Super helpful to use Flexbox properties. And then we want you to have a 500 pixel max width for a mobile site. Paul, if you're having issues with your Let's Watch compiler, that means you have not installed it properly. So please go through the steps on here to make sure that it is installed properly. If you're using Windows, right here. All right, and if it still doesn't work, reach out to your PM, and they'll get you help set up. All right, that is the challenge for tonight and tomorrow. We have some stretch goals. Incorporate a Google font of your choosing if you're going to use new fonts. These are stretch, remember. Don't even worry about these if you're still struggling to get, your mobile view to work, right? But if you have everything working and you're happy with it, then move on to some stretch stuff. It's just extra bonus stuff. Convert the great idea CSS into less. That's pretty ambitious. Create a link to the portfolio page and create a layout that would allow a user to see your work, etc. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with this. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Create your own portfolio site using less, right? And you'll see how fun less is to use. RIP great idea. If you want to like really rush through it and finish it, you can convert the great idea CSS into less if you want, if you still want to use a great idea. Other than that, have fun. This is a fun project, and this is something that you can work on for the entire time you're here as well. Just keep adding new little pieces to it. So first things first, make sure you get everything set up, and you get your less compiler and your less watch compiler set up and working. And like I said, if you can't get it working, please reach out to your PM or the help channel for help. Reach out to your PM and get that working and then work on it. Any questions right now? Other than very specific installation questions, because you should be directing those to your PMs. Okay, there is your project for tonight and tomorrow. We're covering graphs and trees in about 6 months, Jorge. So we'll see you there. There's our project tonight, Preprocessing 1. We get started on it tonight, and it's not due until tomorrow night at stand-up. So have fun with it, and we'll see you later. Have a great night, everyone.